Good morning, Year 6. Mr. Nicholson here. Welcome to today's English lesson. This is probably the first lesson of YouTube of this lockdown. First of all, just want to say I hope you're all okay, staying safe, and that everybody's getting on okay with the remote learning. It's not ideal, but we're just all doing the best we can at the moment, and hopefully we'll be back in school soon. Okay, so I want you just to pause the video for a minute and write down the date and title for this lesson. And the date is Monday, 11th of January, and the title is Describe Mummification. This lesson is the first in a sequence of 4 lessons that we're going to do for English this term. We're going to start off today just by looking at a mummification video and taking some notes about the process. Later on in the week we'll start looking at using adverbial phrases to add detail, using brackets to put extra information in as well, and then on Friday you'll have a chance to publish your mummification instructions up in your best handwriting and your best presentation. Okay, so this is lesson 1 today. Obviously with any of the remote learning lessons there are certain things that we've had to adapt and change because we can't do it in certain things without being in groups, so we'll just do our best. Okay, you've all had a chance to write the date and title, so we'll move on. I want to begin with a little bit of total recall, so if you could write total recall on your page and then have a go at answering this question. And the question is, which underlined word is an adverb? So you've got 4 choices there. Read them through carefully, and obviously it's on the screen so you can't tick the box. But write down the sentence which you think contains an adverb that's been underlined. So pause the video here and I'll give you a minute or 2 to have a go at today's total recall. Okay, let's have a look at the answer for this total recall then. So the first sentence says, the spring garden looks lovely. It's a bit of a tricky one really because adverbs do often end in ly. But in this sentence, the word lovely is being used as an adjective because it is describing the spring garden. The second one says, my little sister has a wobbly tooth. Another ly word, but again, this one is an adjective because it describes the tooth. The one at the bottom says, her brown hair is long and curly. But again, curly is being used as an adjective because it is describing her brown hair. So the correct answer, well done if you got this right, and you can tick it in your book, is the clothes are folded neatly. The word neatly is an adverb because it describes how the person is folding the clothes. Okay, well done, I'm sure lots of you got that one correct. And oh, there goes the school bell. And we'll move on to the lesson. Okay, so I've chosen imagining and absorption for our learning powers today. There's a couple of videos that you need to watch, and those links will be sent through separately on the Teams group. And when you're watching the videos, I want you to be really absorbed and make sure you're taking notes as carefully as possible. Okay, so today's lesson is all about the mummification process that the ancient Egyptians used. So first question we've got on the screen is, what is a mummy? A mummy is a body that has been preserved after death, and it could have been a human or an animal. And by the end of the week we want to write a set of instructions to talk about how these mummies were created. Why did the Egyptians preserve their bodies? Did all Egyptians preserve their bodies? Have a little think about those 2 questions for a minute. You might want to pause the video if you'd like to before you see the answers and before I go through them. The Egyptians believed that when they died, their soul left their bodies. After they were buried, their soul would return, and together with the body would live forever in the afterlife when the world had ended. Unless their body was preserved, it would be no good in the afterlife. Unfortunately, the mummification process was very expensive in the times of the Egyptians, and not everybody could afford to do it. It was an expensive process, and it also took a very long time. So often mummification was just for the rich people of ancient Egypt that could afford to do this. Okay, so this is the main task of the lesson. And then after you've done this task, I'm going to go through a lot more information with you about mummification. So what I want you to do is watch a video clip about the mummification process. Now I'm going to put the link on the next page of this video, but obviously it's a video, so you can't copy and paste that one into your web browser or your Google Chrome. So this link is also being posted on Microsoft Teams, and you can retrieve the link from there. What I want you to do, and to take your time with this, is to watch the video very carefully and take some notes in your English book as you're going through and listening to what happens at the different stages. See how much detail you can add. So what I would expect to see in your books, if you send me photos of this lesson, or you send photos to your teachers through chat, is a page of notes about mummification from the start to the finish, using the video clip to help you. Here is the web address for the video, and as I've said, this has been sent through as a link on Microsoft Teams on the Year 6 Teacher Support page, so you can retrieve the link from there and copy and paste it, rather than typing it in, because as you can see it is quite long. So I want you to pause this video here, and you can come back to me when you've finished the task, and spend about 20 minutes looking at that video and taking some notes and just jotting down all the steps that were involved in preserving an Egyptian body in the mummification process to get the body ready for the afterlife. Okay, and I'll speak to you again in a bit. Okay, welcome back everybody. Hopefully you've had a chance to do the task, and you've looked at the video and written lots of notes to explain the process of mummification. We would normally have in class talked to our partners now and just talked through what the main stages were and made a sort of agreement and put a set group on the flip chart. But today I'll just have to go through them for you, and I'll just get that one from a different page, so just bear with me a second. So the main stages of mummification were, first of all, to wash the body and then remove the brain with a hook, which sounds pretty gross. After that, the left-hand side of the body was cut, and the internal organs, so internal means inside, the organs inside the body were removed. These organs were then left to dry, and they were placed into special jars called canopic jars. After that, the heart was returned to the body. The body was covered with salt, and then it was stuffed with various things, often sawdust, but other things too. And then it was wrapped, and amulets were placed on the body. Amulets are special gems, and a lot of these steps we'll go through in more detail in a minute. The death mask was drawn on the body, and then the body was placed in a special container, a special tomb called a sarcophagus. Okay, so hopefully you've got some notes in your English book which say similar things to this. So what we're going to do now is just return back to the PowerPoint, return back to the video, and I'm going to just go through some of these steps in a little bit more detail. And what I'd like you to do is, if it's something that we mentioned that you haven't, you can pause the video and you can add this information to the notes that you've already made as we find out a little bit more. And if I'm going a little bit too quickly for you, of course you can pause the video at any time. So, what was the process? The body was taken to a place called the Beautiful House, but it wasn't as beautiful as the name suggests. The body was cleansed with palm wine and rinsed with water from the River Nile. The River Nile, of course, being the famous river that flows through the whole length of Egypt. Sometimes they would use a slatted bed on a slant. This would let the fluids drain off and out of the body, and allow them to wrap the strips of linen round the body. Okay, here's the gruesome bit, the brain. The brain wasn't thought to be important. A long hook was pushed up the nose to smash the brain to pieces, then either pull it out or lift the body, so the liquefied brain would drain out through the nose. Yuck. This prevented them having to damage the head or the skull. Organs. A cut was made on the left side of the body and the organs removed to stop the body decomposing. The liver, lungs, intestines and stomach were washed, dried in natron, We'll talk a bit more about that later. And either wrapped in cloth to replace in the body later or stored in canopic jars. And here are 4 pictures of different canopic jars with different Egyptian gods on the top of the pots. The heart, which was responsible for intelligence and emotion, was left in the body as it was needed in the afterlife. And as you can see, it says at the bottom that natron is a salt. Don't forget, if there's any information that we're going through now that I'm reading to you that you haven't added to your list when you did your notes, you can add them in as we go through this. The canopic jars had 4 different heads representing the 4 sons of Horus. So here is Hapi. He's a baboon-headed god, and he was thought to look after the lungs. Imseti, she was a human-headed god, and the liver would be placed inside her canopic jar. Duamateth, who has a jackal head, and this canopic jar looked after the stomach. And Quebeceniath, which was a falcon-headed god, and this canopic jar was used to look after the intestines. Normally in this term we would have made these canopic jars using clay as part of our art and our DT lessons. It's such a shame that we can't do that this term, so hopefully in some of our art lessons we'll be able to do some designs of them instead. Okay, natron, we talked a bit about this earlier. So 75% of the body is water. Wet things rot very quickly, so the body was dried inside and out with the natron, which was a salt. And then what the natron would do is it would absorb, it would take out the moisture, but this process could take a very long time, up to 40 or 50 days. There was further preservation too, so unless they were put in canopic jars, the dried organs would be replaced, or the body would be filled with sawdust. Sometimes that wouldn't be available, so rags would be used, or even leaves to keep the body shape. And then to preserve the skin, the body was coated in a resin that would be made from plants. And then, which is the sort of famous part that everyone knows about really, the body would be wrapped in strips of linen, which is like a cloth material. And often hundreds of meters of it would be used. And the linen would be wrapped very thickly, and it would be an elaborate process that would take a lot of time. So the head and neck would be wrapped first, then the fingers and toes, and this order was very important. Arms and legs would be wrapped separately. And then between the layers of cloth, the mummifier would place amulets, these sort of special sort of brooches, sort of gemstones, and these were thought to protect the dead person in the afterlife. As well as amulets, pieces of papyrus, which is ancient Egyptian paper, were placed between the layers, and this paper would have words from the Book of the Dead placed between the hands. Here is a picture of the mask of Anubis. Anubis was the jackal-headed god of the dead, and while the wrapping was taking place, a priest would wear his mask and would read out spells, and the Egyptians thought that these spells would ward off evil spirits, so would keep the evil spirits away and help that person's body get to the afterlife. The word mummification, the word mummy, actually comes from the ancient Egyptian word mummia, and mummia is like a tar-like paste, it's like a glue that wraps the linen together, and that's where we get that word from. A final piece of linen, the shroud, was placed over the body, and then often the body would go into a coffin with a special death mask. And the most famous one of all is the death mask for the boy king Tutankhamun. You might have heard of that one. The death mask that looked like the person when they were alive was made and put on top of the mummy so that their soul, their ba, could find them. The mummy is put in a wooden coffin. This wooden coffin might be put into another wooden coffin, perhaps even another wooden coffin. It's such a complicated process. And these coffins would be elaborately, so beautifully decorated. The first coffin might be shaped and painted like a body. The box-shaped outer coffin might have eyes painted on it so the person could see. A false door on the inside so the person could step out. And hieroglyphics, special Egyptian symbols that we'll look at later in the term on the outside. A funeral was held, funeral songs were sung, and often a ritual called the opening of the mouth was performed so that the dead person would be able to eat, to drink and speak. The final stage was to put the coffin into a sarcophagus. A sarcophagus is a stone coffin, and that would be placed in a tomb with valuable objects, with food, with drinks for the journey so that the afterlife could be successfully taken. Okay, unfortunately again we've reached another thing that we can't do as we're not in school. So what we would have done in school, I thought I'd just talk to you about this, we'd have a little bit of fun, do some drama and role play, get you to choose one person in your group to be the body, and then we would have a go at acting out each stage of mummification to make sure that person gets to the afterlife safely. But unfortunately we can't do that today. So hopefully what you've just got in your book is just a page of information all about the mummification process. Hopefully you've enjoyed listening to me tell you a bit more about it. There might have been some things that you know already, but hopefully you've learned some new things too. This is another link that's being sent out, and it's just a bit of fun. It's just a funny, horrible history sketch all about the mummification process. I just included this because I thought you might enjoy watching it. Okay, we're at the end of the lesson now. Hopefully you've achieved one of the WILFs, but the main important part of the lesson today is that you can hopefully confidently describe the mummification process to somebody. So if you have a page of notes about mummification and you're happy to share it with your teachers, the big difference with this lockdown is that we're having all the work sent into us. I've been getting loads already from Godreevy, and I'm sure that Mr. Webb, Mr. Long and Miss Owen are having the same with their classes. So we'd really like you to send your work in through chat to your class teacher, and then we're collecting it all up and we're looking at it and we're giving you a bit of feedback too. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the first English lesson of the week. We're going to move on tomorrow to look at making our instructions, making our notes about mummification a little bit clearer by adding in adverbials. So tune in to YouTube tomorrow and have a look at lesson 2. Okay, all the best everybody. Stay safe. Take care. Goodbye.